So let's go on with our investigation. The final step of it is to discover, hopefully, that f3 is the best way to pawn storm the enemy king. But I want to demonstrate it. So we have already seen f4, we're going to see h3 and h4, and finally the way I think is the best one, that is f3. Speaking about h3, we can also say that it transposes to many other Najdorf positions, because it was and still is somehow a very popular waiting move, but not in the 8th move for white, but in the 7th move, that is before bishop e3, because if you don't want to show your cards, or if you prefer to see what the opponent is trying or how is developing before taking out your pieces, 7-8-3 could be a good option, of course. But since we are centering now in the pawn storm rather than other positions, we are going to focus on the pawn storming possibilities of this move. This, we have to say first, is not very ambitious either comparing to f4, because is, as I have said, is rather a waiting move or a way of impeding knight g4 if we aren't planning to play f3. But there are some nuances that we can exploit from the white side if we want to play this variation, even if we have to be conscious of the fact that this is not the way to make the fastest pawn storm, not the best one. But anyway, let's go with bishop e6 and queen f3. This is the principal nuance I was talking about. If we don't make f3, then f3 is a very good square for the queen most of the times. There it can maneuver not only back to the queen side if it's needed, but have an attacking role in the king side, and more direct than in many other variations. This also forbids knight h5, which after g4 and g5 is a typical maneuver to strand the knight on h5 in order to stop any h-file pawn advances white may want to make after. So by playing queen f3 and leaving that diagonal open and forbidding black to play knight h5, we are somehow compromising him, because he's going to have to find squares not only for this knight but for the other one. So an experienced Najdorf player playing with white in this position could maybe get black not to find a comfortable square for when developing the bh knight, because after g5 the knight has to go here, and knight c6 is of course the most natural way we have to develop the other knight. But we can get to some positions after some exchanges here when the d5 pawn is worth a lot, because it will forbid the knights to roam with ease the center of the board. This is also a good variation if we know that our player abuses of the knight h5 maneuver to defend against the pawn storm. Things could go g4 if, for example, if we don't want to play queen f3 first, which I recommend because sometimes after queen f3 is played you realize you need a queen on the queen side. So before developing your pieces, if you are planning in developing the pawns, just stick to the pawn advances, because when the diagonals are so hardly fought as in the Najdorf, you don't want to compromise your pieces too early. So castle. As a black player, I would really recommend h6 here, but h6 would really slow down the white progress, as we have seen also with in some positions with f4. But since we are seeing the pawn storms without black prophylactic moves, I'm gonna stick to this kind of variations, of course. So g5, knight fd7, as we've seen before. This is aimed as